Welcome to the About Healing podcast, a place of love and understanding for all. A reminder that we are in this life together and never alone in our struggles. I'm your co-host, Cherie Buckman, medium and spiritual healer.
And I'm your other co-host, Katie Sass, intuitive energy healer. For more information on us, check out our personal websites listed in our About Healing podcast description.
Let's get our healing on.
Yeah. Good morning. Hi, Cherie.
Hi, Katie.
How's it going for you so far today?
So far, so good. It's been an interesting morning and change. Yeah. And honestly, I think I had to start my morning by aligning myself. Yeah. And I think this is really important, especially as we get into our topic today, our second episode topic. We thought we would start with healing and taking that responsibility for ourselves and really aligning ourselves into a balanced place is really talking about our thoughts. It's the power of thoughts and talking about manifesting and changing perspectives. Katie, as we get into this, it's actually kind of like a subtopic that I feel like I wanted to go to because one of mine was checking my ego. And I really want to explain that too, because when I'm talking about ego, I'm not talking about that super ego, like I'm better than everybody, or that's not the ego that I'm talking about. It's that human part of us. As our soul, we are here having this human experience, and it's only the human part of us that has the ego. Our soul doesn't. The ego is really about isolating ourselves. What do I need? Which ego is not always bad, and I really want to put that out there because ego is good. That helps us, create that space of what we need and where we're at and creating that balance. But the key is to balance it because we can go over it where people are trying to put themselves over others and things like that. So This morning, as you get that little lesson on ego, I had to balance that out this morning because I found myself, I guess, giving myself my own little pity party for a second, which is ridiculous because I know better, but
we're human.
We're human and I'm in this space. And so I had to align that for myself. And I feel better now. I checked myself. Good. I went in and where is that coming from? Because there's always a deeper piece. Like, why would I be feeling this way? And I understand it. I checked it and I understand it. So I feel really good.
Good. And when those times come up that you're feeling off, feeling away from yourself, something feeling off balance, of course, that's when you go in and asking yourself, why is this happening for me? What's going on? What's the deeper message? And then feeling into how you can learn from what's going on and shift your perspective around it so that when you are holding your thoughts, you're creating what you want to create, because we all know that our thoughts create our reality.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yes. And so with all that being said, Katie, how are you today?
Well, I'm feeling good now. A little bit of a tough morning, a lot of stuff bubbling up to the surface. And it's funny because I wake up, I meditate, I ground, I'm feeling awesome. And then life just, pops up. Life popped up this morning and really threw me off. I really had to work on shifting my energy because it didn't feel good. I just spent trying to manage my energy, see why I was so upset. To be honest, I sometimes have a tendency of holding a lot in. I've had to work through, it sounds so funny. I have to cry now. I grew up trying to, and I don't even know if it was a societal thing. I just took it upon myself that I am strong. I don't need to cry. I can get through this. I am positive. I am happy. As I've gotten older, I've just realized that crying is good. It's a release. And I was just feeling it coming up. And honestly, there was a lot of tools I used to try to help shift my energy. Asking spirit, give me answers. Why is this going on? And then I went outside in my backyard and just let it out and just trying to let out this frustration that was coming up inside of me, drawing some oracle cards and looking at my I Ching app. And then I vented. Was able, fortunately, another great benefit I'm finding out with this podcast is the three of us, we talk a little bit before we start recording. And I really needed to talk today because how am I to open up and let information flow through when I've got these kind of blocks of anger and frustration and built up emotion. So how am I supposed to shift that? And so, yes, so using these techniques, asking for help, using the tools, and then really venting to the two of you. And thank you so much for listening to me and allowing me to cry, because it was weird. It wasn't weird, but it's just vulnerable,
just for you.
But afterwards, right? And I
It was
knew,
like,
I'm
just
like,
for
I
you.
have
It
to.
was
It's
fine.
coming out. It's coming out. I know. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for saying that. But I feel so much better, and I'm like, okay, relax.
But you are, and it's very different now. And, and I think that was important. And thank you, Katie, for wanting to talk about that and sharing that too, because, seeing that, and when we're seeing our friends and all of that, I knew right off the bat, this is what Katie and I do. We help each other and we sense things with each other. And I already knew, we kind of already talked, but as we're getting ready to sit down and have our meetings and get ready to record, she just was in a very different place. And so we had to sit down and allow her to process. And she did. And oh my God, if you can't hear it in her voice now, like she's smiling and she feels good. And
feels so
it
much
is.
better.
And I think this is really important is when we work about how much we're holding in, this is everything. This is everything when it comes to healing. I know, Katie, this definitely is the same for you because you've explained it to me before also. But the biggest key to healing, especially when we're working with clients and other people, is releasing emotions. The things that we're feeling, whether it's anger, whether it's sadness, whatever emotion that's coming in, there are no bad emotions. So if you are frustrated and angry, that's not bad. You are feeling that way and you should feel that way. You should never stop yourself from feeling a feeling. You need to allow it to be expressed. And that's how we release it.
Yes.
So important. So the fact, Katie, that you allowed yourself to cry for that moment. And I tell anybody or friends, family, clients, anybody who needs to cry, and I've always heard this. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Like they're crying. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
And I'm very, very clear with anybody who's around me. Don't ever apologize for crying because you are releasing what needs to be released. And at least with me, I'm going to be one of your safe places where you can do that. If you need to ugly cry with snot going everywhere and hyperventilating, then we're going to take a break and allow you to do that for as long as you need. Okay. Release it.
Absolutely. And that's what's so great when you do have that healing work done, because you are put in a place where this is your time to feel it. This is like you are taking out this time, let it come up so you can see it from that other angle. Yourself release some of that energy so you're feeling better, feeling lighter, and so that it doesn't come out later when you're having a discussion with your mate or your spouse or your friend and just lashing out at something that doesn't pertain to what's really going on.
And then it kind of creates this big cycle because you're holding on to all of that anger. Then you're lashing out to somebody else, which is causing some other hurt or confusion to somebody else, especially those who cannot separate that. I've come into a place now where I can separate and I can feel other people, whatever their word vomiting on me or emotion that they're coming out or the anger. It's not mine. They're not angry at me. They're not sad because of me, but it's what they're feeling. And then I'm feeling it, that they're just kind of expressing it that way. So we really have to pay attention to that too. If we're not taking time to process all those things that we're going through, then it does affect everyone around us because it becomes a part of you. It's a part of that energy. And so no matter how much you're trying not to feel or I will deal with it later. That's a huge one. I will deal with this later. I don't have time to deal with this emotion right now. Well, you know what? Even if you're not taking a moment to deal with that emotion, you are projecting it everywhere in every aspect, everywhere.
Right. And then think about it from the aspect too. You're spewing something else onto someone else. And who knows where they're at in that moment too. Maybe they are, well, let's be honest. A lot of us take things on as if it is our fault, and then taking that energy somewhere else or, oh my gosh, I can't believe I did this. Or you get defensive and lash back at that person. It's just this cycle. So we want to feel her emotions so we can release it, get to that higher vibrational space so that when we are interacting with people, we're helping to lift the vibration, and then so on with other people passing on to other people passing on.
Yeah. And so to bring this back, we went into this emotion. Honestly, we could probably do several episodes where we're talking about emotions and processing it, but it's really, really important. Emotions, this really is the key. It is the key to all of that healing out there. Because when we're suppressing emotions, repressing these feelings that we have, trauma, hurt, all of that, anger, and we're not letting it out. This is how I describe it. It like calcifies inside of us into these chakra systems. So we have these 7 main chakra systems throughout our body and our energy bodies. And when we clog one, it doesn't allow a certain type of energy to process. So what happens is we feel imbalanced, or we feel lost, or we feel what's wrong with me, going into some of these things. And the more it calcifies and the more stuff that builds on top of it, because guess what? Other things that happen, if you haven't released or processed that initial big emotion that happened, let's say something you're carrying from childhood, it was something huge, something really big where you felt like a victim, or you didn't get to express yourself, your anger, or whatever it may be, it calcifies. And then everything that happens throughout your life that you still haven't expressed, it kind of goes on top of it and it makes it bigger and bigger. And so you're getting a bigger clog that's happening. And then it's becoming more tougher and tougher. But so we have to go down and start going back to the beginning to release that big calcified piece to allow most of it all to flow again.
Yes. Getting to the root of it, to release it.
And so, don't worry, in a little bit, I do want to make sure we're giving some tools like, oh, that's all big of you to say, but like, what do we do with that? like, I don't even know where to begin. And we're going to talk about a lot throughout episodes and a lot of topics, but even here in a little bit, we'll make sure to give you guys some homework for anybody who is ready or wants to work through that. But I really want to go back almost to the beginning when we were talking about the power of thought with these emotions, because I figure it was really important that we really started our conversation about emotions. We need to be aware of those as we get into our conversation about thought, because our emotions kind of create thoughts, and thoughts create emotion. They're kind of go back and forth. Really, I think to start this conversation, if you don't mind, Katie, I want to read a quote. It's one of my favorite quotes. And it's so perfect for, I believe, this podcast and where we're going for this. Your beliefs become your thoughts. Your thoughts become your words. Your words become your actions. Your actions become your habits. Your habits become your values. Your values become your destiny. And this is a quote by Mahatma Gandhi. And it's one of my favorite because it is true. Our thoughts are connected to everything that we're doing. We want to be careful. And here's the biggest piece when we're talking about our thoughts. So a lot of people say, it was just a thought. I didn't do anything. I didn't express an action or whatever it is. But remember, thoughts are energy too. We create and we're manifesting with our thoughts. And I think we have to be the most careful with our thoughts, especially for me, and where I'm feeling with this conversation, Katie, is talking about our own personal thoughts about ourselves. It's getting in that. So that's kind of like, I feel like the self-thoughts where we're doing all that self-talk, whether we're doing that self-talk and building ourselves up, like, you can do this, like I can do this. I'm working myself up for a project. For instance, like this podcast. Like, holy cow, I'll tell you, this is a lot of nervousness and out of comfort zone for us to do this podcast. But I got this crazy self-talk. Like, you know what? Nope, we can do this. And this might not be my own self-talk, but I also have a lot of other voices. And I don't mean that in a mental health way, you guys. It's that medium part of me. The guides.
No, definitely. Using this podcast as an example, old me would have, I can't do that. I mean, what if I sound dumb? What if I don't have anything to say? What if people think such and such about me? Going down
those rabbit holes.
Those rabbit holes and those paths that create your fears, right? Because then I would be here on this podcast. I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to sound like an idiot. And then who knows what I'm projecting out there? I've learned through power of the thoughts, like, no, okay, this podcast opportunity was coming up for a reason. And we already talked about that the last time and how the universe was presenting to us. So it just almost became choiceless. It did become choiceless. So instead of feeling fear around it, changing that fear, because fear is only going to attract what you don't want, right? Instead, telling myself, you know what? This came up for a reason. I'm going to do it. And I'm going to tell myself the information that needs to come through is going to flow through me, is going to flow through you, it's going to flow through copper. Everything is going to come up how it's meant to come up, and it's all going to be okay. And you know what? Even if it's not okay, so what? I did it. I mean, I've grown in some way. I did it. I didn't shy away from it. I was brave, and I haven't always been brave in my past. And
right.
so I'm doing it.
I feel you on that completely. This is something too. And we're giving you these examples of us going through this podcast because I think it's important for listeners to understand that we're doing something that is scary for us. And that when we do something that's scary, that is the definition of bravery, by the way. It's not the lack of fear that makes someone brave. It's doing something because you are scared. There's so much fear in you and you're doing it anyway. Yeah. But the thing is, it's like this threshold. You've got to get yourself over that fear threshold. And it's beautiful.
Yes.
And you know what? And we're doing this and already throwing all of this information out there. There's so much support out there for us so far. And this is amazing. And we're just beginning. And
well, I just wanted to say too, some people might be thinking, oh, that's great. You can just easily let go of your fear. Well, you know what? Sometimes I have to fake it. Instead of going down those rabbit holes and saying those negative things, I'm great. I'm so smart. I say all the right things, even if I'm not believing it, just saying it and shifting that energy around it. Because we're just programmed and so used to saying the negative things and going to that fear, going to those old stories. And you know what? I'm done with those old stories. I'm making new stories, and I'm going to find some new words that align with those new stories, whether I believe it in the moment or not, because then it becomes the reality. Because I start saying it, I start to feel it. And I see that shift in things that are happening. Like I see what I start to think about something is what happens. Just even something simple like taking my kid to an appointment, that they're dreading. Okay, say my child is dreading going to this appointment. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to start feeling like it's going to be a success. That's not going to be a big deal, that they're actually going to have a smile on their face when they're done with that appointment. And it happens. It happens. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to do this with everything. So it's just so important to really watch your thoughts and what you're projecting out there, because what you're vibrating at, what you're feeling is what you're going to create.
And there's so much I even want to say around that, but I want to really go back to about those thoughts and, when we're those fears and we're projecting fears, because for example, too, when I first started telling people about what I do, that I'm a medium and I'm a spiritual healer, because this is going very left from what I was doing before. No one knew this about me. And then there was that fear of judgment out there, having that. And I didn't want to tell people, or people were going to leave me, or they were going to call me things, or this is going to be this big shift. But there was this big moment where I had to take this all in and having those thoughts for myself, but this is happening for a reason. I know deep down and I feel through it. So I was feeling all of it. It feels positive. I'm doing, and what I'm feeling is love. It is totally love. I've never felt better in my entire life. So I need to express this, and whatever is going to happen because I cannot control thoughts of others. And this is massive. And I really want to put this out there. This is like the number one rule of the universe is free will. And you cannot control others. You need to know that now. No, you can't control others, and we can't control thoughts. And it only starts with ours. And if we want to teach others, then we have to start with doing it for ourselves too. Making those positive thoughts and doing these beautiful things and putting ourselves out there. It's amazing. And then with that, as we're now being aware of these thoughts and we're starting to create, because we're creating as we're doing. So the moment I stepped out and I started telling everybody about what I did, I was so grateful and surprisingly shocked about how much support I got, because I was being so true and honest, and I was raw. And it was the truest me. But I realized what I had done is that I had collected these beautiful people, and these are the beautiful people that have supported me. Whether people understand it or not, that's okay. It doesn't matter. No one has to. This is mine. And I'm here for those who need the help. I don't push it on anybody because it's the biggest part. So now we're creating and doing these beautiful things where you're drawing beautiful clients, like with you, Katie. And now we're doing this beautiful work. It's a beautiful example, at least for me, that I can express to people coming from such a fear-based place where I held in so much about myself. I am an extrovert and I can talk to people all day, but to go so deep and express yourself and talking about your deepest beliefs and your deepest truths, that's scary. It's vulnerable.
It is vulnerable. And that's how we create change and then inspire other people to be vulnerable and to be real.
Right.
Yeah. And I think it's also important too, just to add a little bit to that, in coming out about things about ourselves and being nervous about judgment and how people are going to take it. Just hold on to the belief that as we're shifting and growing and evolving, so is everybody else. Who knows where they're at in their evolution and, in their ascension process. Again, with the thoughts.
It all began with the thoughts.
It begins with the thoughts of expecting people to be supportive, because that's who you attract to. You support others and others support you.
And I think it's beautiful. So if you are one of those who have these thoughts and hold fears about judgments, or you have these deep rooted truths about yourself, and honestly, you may not even know what truths you have about yourself because you haven't allowed yourself to go there, because, you knew deep down it might uncover things that may not be a norm in society right now. And I think this is big because we have to adjust that. So it's really interesting. So if anybody doesn't know, I just started a new newsletter through my own personal website. And so if anybody's curious, you can go onto my website and subscribe. However, this is what I talked about, was getting out of your comfort zone. And one of my least favorite words in all of the English language is the word normal. First of all, normal is different for everybody. There is no one normal that goes across the plane. But if you looked up the definition of normal, it's about conforming to what is socially acceptable. And to me, that is so confining. Like, that's really confining and holding people down. And it's kind of like, to me, it feels like this, like, being weighted down under a net, like extremely limiting. And when you can get to a moment to cut all those cords and letting yourself out and expressing yourself, I mean, you might be different, but you know what? The more that I have allowed myself to be different and putting myself out there, well, holy moly, let me tell you what I was manifesting. I was manifesting and drawing others like me to me. I was drawing and I was understanding how many more people are out there that are expressing themselves differently, that are breaking these trends and showing us where we're going. And it's beautiful, that we can go into this and see people's true colors and people's trueness, the authenticity that we're talking about, who we are in our deepest parts. And oh my goodness, it's amazing. So if you are one of those who are leading trends of being different, good for you. And I am putting this out here because I'm getting chills all the way through my entire body. You are amazing. And you know what? If you have a beautiful story about putting yourself out there and your power of thoughts and your manifesting and what you're doing for change, please email us. I want to hear a story. I really do. I want to hear your stories. I will share your stories. This is important. And I feel this is huge. So please, abouthealingpodcast@gmail.com. Email it here. I want to hear these stories because it's not just me and Katie. This is our small little piece of what we're doing. But if we can share yours, it's amazing. What is your story? What have you broken past in your chain of thoughts of where you are or where you were to where you are now? What boundaries and what difficulties did you have to go through? And what are you still going through? Because it's still out there. There's judgments by everybody, which is going to bring us into that other topic where we wanted to talk about judgments too.
Yes, please share and inspire others too, because it's so nice to just see what other people are going through, what they've been through and where they're at. So you're like, yes, this is working. This is happening. This is how things are evolving and where we're moving towards. And And it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing because we need to hear more examples of people overcoming and shifting and growing.
Going back to with the judgments, and I really want to explain to those who hold a lot of that fear and we don't express ourselves because of judgments, to understand what a judgment is. Judgments are fear-based expressions is what a judgment is. I always say too that when you hear judgments from others, that there's a big mirror is what it is. See a big mirror in front of them as they're expressing a judgment and know that that's usually a deep-rooted fear going into somebody. Because the reason am explaining this too is for people to understand that have been holding fear of, that's what they're afraid of, is they're trying to find their truest self and trying to express it, is just know that, first of all, by expressing your truest self, you're going to find more love and you're going to be drawing the truest people to you when you do that. And if you lose people because of their judgments, just know that that's their fear. That is their own, and that is not yours. You are not the cause of their fear. That is their own. And it's not for us to judge that back. Is we need to see that and release it and say, okay, I see where you're at. These are part of your lessons that you're going through. And you know what? You just let that go. And maybe one day they'll work through it. And maybe you express something that later on, as they process, you may have changed something later. Like, hey, I'm sorry about that. Or can you tell me more? Or whatever it may be.
That's beautiful. I love what you said right there, Cherie. I don't have anything to add. I just had to say it. I was like, yes, right on, right on.
It is.
It's so true. It's so true, and it stops. It's just when you're in this argument or you're in a discussion with somebody, sometimes it's okay to just stop and like, okay, they're going through their own stuff. Don't take it on. You don't have to grow it any bigger. Just step away. And that's why sometimes a lot of messages come through as to just listening. Just listening. You don't always have to react. You don't always have to react. And then, because oftentimes when you don't react and you use that power of being quiet in the moment, you're able to move through, reflect, see the deeper meanings of what was going on, see if it's yours, see if it's theirs, and then letting it go where it needs to go.
And on the other end of that too, while you're being quiet and you're processing, you're also allowing the other person to get out of the defensive stage. Because when we get defensive, like we're blah, 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 so that's where someone's going.
Yeah.
So if you can slow it down, you're allowing the others time to reflect and feel it too. Then they start thinking about what's happening, the reaction, like, why aren't they reacting? And it's forcing others to really start thinking about it too.
Right. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And the one other thing I want to say about these judgments too is you really have to look at your own judgments. And this is something I started this a couple of years ago. And when I started understanding judgments and I was working through releasing my fears of judgments by others, of course, I had to go inward and I had to take my responsibility from my own judgment. And so every time I felt myself react to something or express a judgment that really wasn't coming from a place of love and understanding, I stopped and I really dissected it for myself. It's an internal thing is what I did. I stopped myself. I'm like, wait a minute. Why do I feel this way? Why am I judging someone else and what they're doing? Because really, that's not my place. It really wasn't. It's never my place. Why am I doing that? And it really helped me understand some pieces that I was still learning and working through. And it happens now less and less because I think, this is where I'm at. I'm in this place of this love and understanding of everybody going through their lessons and that everybody has their own path and their own place and own time of dealing with things. And if we are not meant to connect, and if what I'm saying doesn't make sense to you, then it's not your time to accept it. And that's totally fine. I do not take judgment or fear from that now, where at one point it's like, but if everyone doesn't agree, what if everyone doesn't, accept what I'm saying? Not everybody has to. That's not what this is about.
Right. I love that, Cherie. I love the fact that you say just putting it out there to like, if they don't agree, then that's okay. Or if they're not ready to receive some information, that's okay. Everybody's learning at different levels of where they're supposed to be learning. And that's cool. But I also like that you aren't saying that you're trying to continue to convince people, because all that
Absolutely.
is it drains you of your energy. And it's not your job to sit there and try to convince people that they're just not ready to receive.
I'm just going to plant this seed. You know where to find me if you're ever curious, if this is
Yes,
ever something.
exactly.
And it's not just me. And here's the
Exactly.
thing. I'm also a huge supporter. I am not the only one. We are not the only ones that do the work that we do. People are drawn to certain types of energy and levels and vibration levels. So if let's say you feel like you're needing or wanting or being drawn to healing by someone like us, or actually it doesn't even matter that you're ready to heal yourself, you're ready to work out. Guess what? If you're going to a traditional therapist, oh my goodness, so much support in that too. I love it. I have friends that are therapists. I have seen therapists. It is beautiful. And yes, it is helpful too. We are just another tool, or no matter what direction you decide to go, that is for you to decide because you are feeling what you need in that moment. No matter what, there is no judgment, no matter what avenue you decide to go and where you're being drawn in your own healing level, whatever you need to do.
Right. And there's always different people to match different people's energies too. It's not one type of healing fits all. That's why we need so many more. There's so much more space for those who are feeling called to help others to step into it, because there's just never a shortage. There's never a shortage. And you're going to attract.
Yeah. Like for instance, like I don't go out and advertise what I do because usually I'm referral. People hear, and this is kind of how it works. And even, no matter who's listening right now, not everyone's going to want to be drawn to me. And that's not where it's at. This is not why we're doing this. It's to those who are. And maybe you're drawn to the podcast because maybe it's something that we're talking about brings in this topic and allows you to expand and really seep down some of the information we're bringing forward. That's what you need. You're drawn to a weekend away at the spa, whatever it is, that is healing in itself because you're doing self-care and you're getting yourself taken care of or getting your nails done or whatever it may be. You just really have to draw and follow your instincts on that. And there should never be judgment. Don't ever, ever be afraid of what other people might be thinking. There was a long time ago where we talked about mental health in any way, shape, or form, where mental health it's working through its stigmas, but that was a big taboo thing and people were put away and we had asylums at one point. And you have to think about it, where we've come in the last 100 years, even talking about this and healing and expressing ourselves, still working on being comfortable with expressing ourselves and without having these fears or other people placing their judgments to hold people back. We're still working through that.
Yep. And we're going to be working on it for a while. It's part of the journey. It's part of the journey.
As we're working through this, I want to make sure that I'm leaving some tools with some of our listeners. We've talked about the emotions, and how they can really, really clog your chakras and our energies and everything else. So we need to make time and space to allow ourselves to do this. And so I wanted to give these tools to let people know on just some small things that you can start processing and doing for yourself at home is number one, allow yourself to take a space. So let's say you just feel yourself getting really, really angry at work. You're at work or you're a mom with children everywhere, running around and doing what you need to do. Even if you need to take a hot minute to run to the bathroom, run that water and just cry. Allow yourself to sob or do what you need to. Go to your car, sit in your car for a minute, blast music, whatever you need to do. And music is huge. It attaches to our emotions too. So if you find the right music to allow yourself to do that, then you should. And if you are not one who is still ready to do that part, and that's okay. If you're not one to cry or yell, find a pillow and scream if you need to. You can do that too. What actually I share with all of my clients is journaling. If you don't want to express it in that way, or if you are not comfortable talking to a friend, if you don't have a friend that you trust that you can really let go with, because that's huge too. If you can talk to somebody that vent, let it go, is journal. Write it down for yourself, because even writing it down is a form of release. You're getting it out of your head. You're writing it down to a place where you can understand and let that go too.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're holding frustration in and needing to talk to somebody about how they are making you feel and you're not ready to talk to them, to just kind of piggyback off that journaling, write a letter. Doesn't have to be given to them. Just write it and get it out, because I find that sometimes when I use that letter writing exercise, sometimes I have to rewrite that letter again. And it gets lighter. And it also helps me to really figure out what I want to say when I'm ready to talk to that person.
Mm-hmm.
If I do, sometimes I don't even, and it just goes away, because using that form of writing a letter helped me to express what was being held in. And okay, maybe I'm making a bigger deal of this than it needs to be. But if it's not, and it's a conversation that needs to be had, writing that letter helps me to really see what the heart of the issue is. Like, let's not make it about all these other things.
And by the way, that's huge. This is part of the homework I give clients too. Write a letter. At the end of it, especially if it's a super loaded letter, if it's a super loaded one, burn it. It's one of those things. It actually helps cause a chemical release in your brain too by doing that and releasing some of those big words. By the way, this happened once, but in reverse. Someone wrote me a letter once, someone who was not in a really good frame of mind. I remember this, and nothing had to do about me. I barely knew this person. It had nothing to do about me. It was so full of so much self, anger, and all this other things that I burned it. It burned green. It was the craziest thing. The flame turned colors. I was like, I was like, what is in this letter? It was the craziest thing. I don't know. Honestly, it was just, there was so much hurt and anger in that person that was being expressed in that way. And so I think this is huge too. And I'm actually glad I'm bringing this up too, is for someone to understand that when you're going through things, you're holding anger or this connection between you and another person. I think this is really important, especially when we're putting those judgments and all of that, only if this person would, only if, or, if this would happen to me, then things would be better. If this person would change, then things would be better. Stop for a second. And this is huge. We can do a whole other series on this, because you have to pull your energy back and find what you're responsible for, because you're allowing yourself to be put in this space by another person. You're allowing this person to affect you in that way. Why is it? Why are you giving them that energy? Why are you allowing them to take all that control from you? Just remember that too. And I think that when that letter burnt that way, I cut that cord. For me, it was that cutting. I took all of that. Like, I literally took my power back in that moment and let it go, because it wasn't mine. Yeah. So Katie, did you have any other homework or anything like that you want to give out?
Yes. Thank you so much for assigning that homework. I love homework. It helps us to step into these new ways of being. It helps us to really practice shifting these things and helping us to lift these energies off. So again, homework. Something comes up for you, feel into it. Feel what's going on for you. Work on releasing it. Do those steps to help change that energy and shift what's going on. And then if it's still something that you are holding on to and it's just not going away, later on in your evening, use that journaling technique, use that letter writing technique, or use it all, whatever you're feeling called to.
Yes. Well, it was amazing talking with everyone this week. We are so excited to be here. We look forward to next week. And remember, please email us if you'd like to share those authentic stories. We would really like to hear them. And we may even create a whole episode in sharing those. Have a great week, everyone.
Bye. With much gratitude, thank you for tuning in. You can find us at Pandora, Spotify, Apple, Google Podcasts, or any of your favorite places to find podcasts.
Remember to subscribe and follow us on Facebook and Instagram. And to share any comments, or if you have any questions, please email us at abouthealingpodcast@gmail.com. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another amazing episode. Until then, be kind to yourself.